Greetings, Hotep. Namaste to you all. On this episode, what I'm going to do is that I want to briefly speak on a question that was shot to me maybe last week, and it's been on my mind today to go ahead and address it and cover it. And the person asked me, is it true that certain races, or what I would consider different species, but certain species of humans do not have a soul? And to just blatantly answer your question, I would have to say no, that is not true. However, there is a lot of scientific, research that needs to be done on, humanity's behalf in understanding what a soul is in relationship to your race or your species. There are different levels to your connection with your soul. And it doesn't really matter what race you are, or what species you are, or what type of human you are. We all have a soul, but there are different versions of the soul. You have what's called the oversoul, or kind of like a universal soul that all of humanity shares. This is a shared soul. And then you have a version of the soul that is based on your records and your interpretation of various different lives that you've experienced here on this planet. And this version of the soul is what helps to shape your character. But your connection with your soul, your ability to really experience your soul, is based upon activating this third eye, or what's actually scientifically called the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is very important because this is why many people have hard times understanding spiritual topics. This is why many people have even get offensive when you talk about certain spiritual topics. This is because they're experiencing medical problems and health problems with their pineal gland. They have what's called a calcified pineal gland. And some people are born with the pineal gland center activated, and some people can easily activate the pineal glands, or the brow chakra is what it essentially is. Some people can activate that energy center a lot easier than other people, and there are many people that struggle with it, and it has nothing to do with your race. It has nothing to do with how much melanin you have or don't have. It all boils down to health, and your health based upon your spiritual center, or your energy center that is located in your third eye, and how healthy that is, how functioning that is, how much that's vibrating or spinning around. Many people feel like just because they're born within a certain race, they're more spiritual than people that may not be born within another race. That's totally untrue. And you can easily, gauge how spiritual a person is, or how much spiritual understanding a person has, by basically bringing up certain topics, certain subjects on a spiritual level to them, and seeing how much they connect with the topic, or seeing how much they like to converse about the topic. You ever talk about spiritual topics to some people and they get quiet and they don't really want to talk about it, or they avoid it, or they may even argue with you? This is how you can tell that a person has that calcified pineal gland, and they have a blockage because of the calcified pineal gland. They have a blockage with connecting with their soul. So you connect with your soul through, it starts in the pineal gland, and it actually has a lot to do with your heart chakra as well, and your throat chakra. See, there was one time when we first incarnated here on this planet, and when we were born, we had a special gland within us And this gland was located in our throat area. And this gland gave us higher senses. This gland gave us senses of psychometry, telepathy, clairvoyance, clairaudience, and this gland was activated in everyone. But there was a time when certain extraterrestrial beings that were malefic, they began to partake in certain experiments, and they removed this gland out of the human species, out of some humans, out of some of the human species. And beings that have this gland removed, or different species of humans that have this gland removed, they begin to live a more primitive life. They begin to live a life that was more so based on gratifying the lower self. See, when we first incarnate, there's different species of humans. When we first started incarnating here, there's different experiments that took place with various different monkeys. There are experiments that took place with the orangutan, the chimpanzee, the gibbon. Different species of apes were involved in getting humans to the state that we are. We have a genetic link with apes. Some of us have a genetic link with dogs. So it depends on which extraterrestrial group you came out of as to how your soul functions and your ability to connect back with your soul group. There are 7 different species of what you would call melanated beings. There are 2 different species of Caucasian beings, and there are 3 different species of what you would call Asiatic beings or Asian beings. And what you got to remember is that some of us are a mixture because we mixed in our bloodlines with different species. It's just like people that were born here or people that have Native American ancestry. If you have Native American ancestry, you are not just purely African. You have a mixture of Asian in you or Asiatic in you. When the Olmec people came over here, the Olmecs mixed in with a group of Asians coming out of China, out of a certain empire. They agreed to mix in their species together. So this is why a lot of Native Americans will have so-called, I guess you could say, negroid features. I mean, I hate to use that term. I use that term very loosely, but what you would consider dominant broad noses and, broad lips and essentially, I guess you can say, more Moorish features. But then they would also have a mixture of Asian features. They may have slanted eyes. And you see so-called melanated or so-called black people like that to this day. They're a mixture of Asian and African or West African, because the Olmec people came out of West Africa and migrated here. These were the first Americans. So it kind of gets complex, and when you start talking about the soul, we've mixed up so much that we all have a soul. We all have a soul. Just like certain Caucasian tribes in Europe. I mean, they mixed in freely with Moorish people. Well, what do you think Italians are? Italians are Moors. They may be so-called pale or, they may be so-called white, but they're a mixture. They are, in fact, Moors. You look at some Italian women, they have really nice buttocks. Like just like so-called black women. I mean, they're plump and round and they look the same, So we've mixed up. We've mixed our genes. So this is all important to understand your connection with soul, though. So we all have a soul. We all have a soul, but it's just some of us, our pineal glands may be more calcified because of our ancestors, the way they ate, and different things. It may not be activated in you. You may have to do more spiritual work to activate or to decalcify the pineal gland. Things that you can do to decalcify the pineal gland is, first and foremost, alkalinity. Drinking lemon water. Partaking in eating fruits and vegetables. These things, you don't just become a vegetarian or eat fruits and vegetables because you want to be healthy and live long. You do this so that you can connect more with your higher self and your soul, so that things can become more clear to you, so that you can have an experience with spirit. And what spirit is trying to tell you, you can have a direct communication with it, and this can become more clear to you. So this is very important. Another thing, of course, there are certain crystals and elixirs that you can make. Elixirs help to decalcify and activate the pineal gland. If you make an elixir with, say, for instance, amethyst, you can put the amethyst in the water, sit the amethyst outside for about 24 hours up under sunlight and moonlight. This is called an elixir. And when you sit the amethyst crystal in water and sunlight, this is going to activate the crystal. This is going to activate the water. And essentially, what this is going to do is that once you drink it, this is going to help to decalcify your pineal gland. So you have to incorporate all of these things in together, if you really want to experience your soul and experience, your past lives and experience your soul's essence. Is linked into health. If you're not healthy, you're never going to discover your life mission. You're never going to discover your connection with spirit. So don't just think just because you may be a melanin dominant being or what may have you that you just automatically got spirit all figured out. You have to question yourself. How do you really feel about spiritual topics? Do you do you feel ashamed because you have a connection with certain spiritual topics? You may have a connection with, the occult, or to have a connection with understanding different extraterrestrial beings and things of that nature, but you may feel ashamed. You may feel like you have to hide it and things of that nature. This shows that you don't have a direct connection with your soul and your spirit. You have not overcame that fear. People that are fearful are not as spiritual. They're not as soulful. You see, the soul has courage. You can overcome anything when you have a soul and when you have a connection with your soul. So I hope that helped to, just kind of briefly just answer that question. We all have a connection with spirit. We all have a connection with soul. We all are beings here in this experience and in this reality that have a soul. We do share, we have what's called an oversoul that we share, and I'll talk about that in another video, and speaking on the different animals, because it depends on the experiments that were used, in getting you here as a human. Depending on your bloodline and your genes, you have to trace your genetics back. So this is going to determine, how connected you are with soul, or your ability to activate soul. But we all have it, so don't let anybody tell you, no matter who you are, what race you may be, that you don't have a connection with soul. We all have a connection with soul. It's just about activating it and demonstrating it. So I thank you for watching this video. I thank you for listening to my brief measure, my brief spiel, and I'm going to go ahead and shut down. And until my next video, I'm going to leave you in Hotep, Namaste, Wadu, which means goodbye.